What is the because I find it interesting you mentioned that like when you get a steak or a ribeye, like there should be a lot of fat on it. Are there any other foods that you would recommend like on the carnivore diet that would be good for them to try or even just do because like they should actually stick to? Because I know some things like some controversies. There's like, oh, let me have a lot of bacon, but it's like some people are like, oh, I'm afraid of bacon because what it actually results in or what it causes. Like, is there other meats besides steak that would have a lot of fats?
There's actually any meat you can have. You can have venison. You can have ground beef. You can have lamb. You can have eggs. Eggs are a super food. As long as the meat has fat on it and it has good essential fats on it, you shouldn't fear it whatsoever.
Yeah.
We were all brought up to think that saturated fat is bad, like the likes of butter, ghee, all these different oils. We were all brought up to think that all this was, we should never have this, but it's completely false. Anything that has saturated fat in it is perfectly fine. Absolutely, there's no issues with it whatsoever.
Yeah. One thing I know a lot of people struggle with is just the aspect of, they're trying to remove carbohydrates all at once and just eat meat. And sometimes, people are like, oh my God, I would love to have like a good like pasta or like some other type of carbohydrate. Is there actually a gradient approach in terms of when you should move over to carnivore? Or is it just like a straight up, like, let's just move it and let's just ignore everything else?
No, pretty much what I do is I do it in phases. So in phase 1, I always say to people, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to eliminate all the processed food out of your diet, first of all. So that's the first thing. Yeah. The second phase is we move on to grains and carbohydrates. So we remove the grains, we remove the carbohydrates, and then on the third phase, we remove all the vegetables. So for me, I never say to someone like, listen, okay, if you're going to do it carnivore, I want you to jump straight in and just go cold turkey and just do it. A lot of people can do it, but a lot of people need to be phased out of it in the right way. Right. Because you have to remember, a lot of people are coming from an addiction of eating carbohydrates. And it's very, very hard when we think about an addiction, like smoking or alcohol or anything like that. It's very hard to say to someone, okay, listen, I need you to stop.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it the right way and just phase them out nice and easy, I usually find that these people actually come back to you and they say, like, listen, I don't need this anymore. So you can clearly see they're going the right direction. So when someone comes to me and says, Mark, I don't need to eat processed food anymore. Okay, box ticked. That's phase 1 done.
Right.
Then on the second one, we introduced it like complex carbohydrates. But then after 6 weeks, they're like, okay, Mark, I don't need carbohydrates anymore. I feel better now just eating proteins and fats. Another tick. That's phase 2. That's phase 2 done. But then they'll come back to me on the third phase and say, but Mark, I still don't feel good. And I'll say, right, okay, at this stage, I want you to remove the vegetables and just focus only on the meat. Bingo. That's when people come back to you and say, right, okay, now I understand. Now I understand why I'm going to do this now for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Do you find it like some people, I'm sure when they come to you, they kind of have a disbelief of like, carnivore is a long-term, sustainable diet. But, for some people, they have a hard time believing that it is because, oh, look how much you're losing. And you're like, you have all these meats that you're eating now rather than nothing else. Do you like from your standpoint as a coach and as a person who's really an advocate of, the carnivore diet, like, do you find this diet is sustainable for the long term?
For me, yes. I see that pretty much if people just eat this way, you'll actually see for yourself. See, we were all brought up, when we look at our plate, we were all brought up that, okay, there should be a lot of food on our plates. Like it should have the rainbow. It should have protein. It should have a little bit of vegetables. So it's very, very hard for people to comprehend that when they look at their plate, all they see pretty much is a piece of steak. That's all they see. Yeah. And it's very, very hard to understand that. And that was the biggest problem I had, is that I didn't have anything else on my plate. All I had was just a piece of steak. But when I kept on eating this food, and when I was finished eating the food, I was completely full.
Wow.
Whereas when I used to eat like the standard American diet, or the standard, like, say, where we'd have vegetables, we'd have carbohydrates, we'd have a little bit of protein, I was always hungry.
Yeah.
So this is where I would say to people is, don't focus too much on the food aspect. Focus more on what it actually does for you.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get the benefits.
Yeah.